everyone. Everyone, if you can take your seats, we're going to resume again. Hope everyone's feeling better after a little bit of lunch. So we have a great speaker kicking off this afternoon, Shira Abel. Abel. Sorry, Shira. So she founded Hunter & Bard, full-service marketing agency, serves as its CEO, and she is here all the way from Israel. Before Hunter & Bard, she was a director of marketing at Animum, doubled the revenues from its commercial YouTube channel by changing the methodology of engagement via social marketing. So she's a lady who's done it before. She's changed the way companies operate, used marketing in ways that will drive the business, and she does this as advisory work for a lot of companies now. She also ran her own consulting business. She's been the head of international marketing at Rich FX. So she works with startups, with entrepreneurs, so companies kicking off new projects inside the company. And she has an executive MBA from the Kellogg School of Management in the US. And actually, for all you Lithuanians here, she's actually from Lithuania by ancestry. So quite a few generations back, but she's one of us, as it were. And I'm very pleased to have Shira join us all the way from Israel. And thank you to the Israeli Embassy for supporting her travel here. Thank you.
Hi. I tend to do a talk a little bit different than most. I like to talk with the audience rather than to the audience. So that means I'm going to watch you while I'm speaking, and if you have a question, I want you to raise your hand. I want you to interrupt me. Now, I realize you're not used to that. That's not typical in Europe. On the other hand, I live in Israel, so there's nothing there. You're not going to surprise me. You're not going to shock me, and I'm totally fine with argumentative. So I'm going to get started. And if you've got any questions, literally, I'll be scanning the crowd while I talk. If you have any questions, really, don't hesitate to ask. If you're up there, you may have to wave your hands because I won't see it. Yes, exactly. Do you have a question? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get started. Okay, marketing for startups. So who am I? We help companies. This is what we do. This is Annabum's numbers before and after. The situation here, they were a company that had somebody who was running digital marketing who had a background of SEO and SEM. He didn't have a background in social. They tried to game the social, and they didn't give. And here's the thing about social. The thing about social is when you start to give to others, they give back. So we had a commercial YouTube channel. We featured animators from our regular website on the commercial YouTube channel. And instead of saying, yes, we'll put your URL on, yes, we will put your Twitter, they said no to everyone. So I came in, I changed the methodology, and we actually sent an email out to all of our animators saying, we love your work, we think you're amazing, and anything you need, we'll give to you. And from that, they spread the word about us. Had they been doing this from the very beginning, their trajectory of growth would have been completely different. Okay, so that's me. He already told you all about me, so I don't need to go through that. What you're looking for is an unfair advantage. You're looking to grow your startup. So how do you end up getting there, right? This is what everybody is looking for. So how do you get to your unfair advantage? That could be your service is better than anyone else's. That could be your technology is better than anyone else's. But what are you looking for that's going to make that gap and that loyalty to your customer more than anybody else? By the way, all of these slides will be on SlideShare afterwards, so you don't need to worry about taking pictures. Okay, so I'm going to start with strategy. Okay, marketing should come the moment the product is conceptualized. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you have to think about who's going to be buying your product, okay? And if you don't think about who's going to be buying your product and you just think about the technology and how much you're in love with the technology itself, you're not actually going to be making something that people necessarily need. You're going to end up with the technology afterwards, and then you're going to be looking for a market. That's not the way to do it. You look for the market first. You find the need, you find the pain, then you build the product. If it's solely technology driven, as often is the case, then you end up with an amazing technology that maybe somebody wants, but maybe somebody doesn't, and then the technology goes away. So strategy starts with a business definition. You know what, I'm not even going to go through this because I don't have enough time. So here's an example of strategy. Business objective, improve financial performance. Business metric, reduce long-term dependency in ads. Okay, an example of this. AppsGeyser is a client of Hunter & Bard. And they came to us, they wanted content marketing in order to lower their dependency on ads. So after about 4 months of us handling their blog and social and everything else, the ROI they were getting from the blog ended up being higher than the ROI they received from the ads. So you have to watch the funnel, you have to watch your numbers, you have to make sure that there's an ROI there, but once you've got it, it continues. And the nice thing about social and content marketing is that the more you create, the more it actually gives back to you, even if you stop doing it. Yeah? Should you blog on your own site or someone else's? Both. Yes. You blog on your own site, you blog about things that have to do with your industry and the pain point that your customer has. You don't blog about your own company. And then you also do guest blogging. And you could do guest posting and a whole bunch of other things and a lot of other sites. There's a million different ways to pull in content. Google does not give you SEO juice for links in other places as much as they used to. They basically killed that. You grow your audience, though. So you want to make sure that you're putting your content on a site where your audience is. And so, example, we did a couple articles on app marketing for ProBlogger. Okay? Pulled people in. So that's the type of thing you want to do. You want to figure out who your audience is, where are they, and then aim for blogs like that. Here's another example. Fujicade is an app. And they've grown their market through an app, grew their market through content marketing and the blog. Okay, these are things you can read later, so I'm not going to go through them. Again, another thing you could read later, concept phase. So what do you do in the concept phase? You're just thinking about it. You don't really have everything completely done. You're in development, okay? This is even pre-alpha. So in the concept phase, you could start testing, and you could start testing everything. Okay, you also do this in the very, very alpha early stages. So in the concept phase, you could start testing your messaging, ads to landing pages. You can test any type of assumptions that you've got. The other thing is you could start reaching out to industry influencers and getting to know them, and don't ask for anything. You can see what they're looking at. You could also start researching. Now, Colette talked all about this. You know all about PR now, so I don't need to tell you. But it's at this stage you start researching the media people that you want to go after when you get past seed, when you get past alpha into launch, okay? And when you're finally ready to do your hard launch, that's something else. We'll get to that. So, how do you test your idea? How do you do an MVP? How many of you have read The Lean Startup? Okay, for those who haven't, I recommend getting the book and reading the book. The Lean Startup is basically all about how do you do an MVP. So an MVP is how you test your product. And there's so many different ways to do it. I've read about MVPs where before they actually make the product, they have a landing page. They take you through all the way from the landing page to buy, okay? And they actually have you put in your credit card. And now this example, they chose an IP somewhere in the Midwest in the US, and they wanted to see how many people converted. So how many people came in through the ad, then converted into signing up, then converted into paying. And from those numbers in, when the numbers were enough, they decided, yes, this is actually a product that's worth it to build. They didn't build the product yet. That's a way to test and save yourself some money and some time, okay? So if you've got software as a service, you're not totally sure you've got a market, you choose an area in that isn't New York or San Francisco, somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere in, like, say, the Netherlands or someplace, and you do ads to landing pages, and you test to see where does the funnel go and how does your conversion go, okay? Once you've got enough people in, you actually build your product, then you can actually launch it. Now, for apps, they say you can't really do an MVP, because for apps, as soon as it's launched, it's out there. So you can't really be in stealth mode or anything else. There's a hack. It's not completely true. So what you can do is you can launch the app under a different name and start testing all the things you've got inside of the app. And you can do that in, say, a smaller country in Europe, okay? And you just launch it in that one country. And you test and test and test. And you see what features work and what don't, and change accordingly. And then you launch the app en masse, worldwide. Okay? So, already talked about that. Alpha phase. Start blogging. like I said before, content marketing. So Danielle Marul and Mattermark, and I think I still have her last name spelled improperly, and I'm sorry, Danielle. Or actually, no, that's the first name spelled improperly. It's Danielle and not Daniel. So I have to fix that. Landing pages to signups, everything that I talked about before. A/B testing. A/B test everything at this point. Okay? Because all of these things are going to be changing. You get to find out what works and what doesn't. As soon as you've got everything perfect, it's going to make your life a lot easier when you go to launch. After product market fit. What is product market fit? Product market fit is 40%, actually is that? Nope. 40% of your market would be really, really, really unhappy if you were to disappear tomorrow. Okay? So that means 40% retention. If you need daily use of your app, that would be 40% daily use. If you you need them to come into the site once a week, 40% daily use, or 40% once a week. This isn't for everything. If you're a tax accounting platform, they're only going to come back to you once a year. But for situations that you can actually test like this, 40%. 40% of your product, 40% of the people who use your product will be really, really unhappy if you were to disappear tomorrow. Holy trinity of marketing online. At the center of it has to be great product. Why? Because great marketing will kill a bad product quicker than anything else. And then you won't have the time to find out if your product, if your product could have made it, if it was any good, because people won't come back. Even if you fix it, they don't care. So you have to make sure you've got product market fit before you even start. Then you've got earned media PR, relationship marketing, and SEO ads and affiliate. For mobile, it's basically the same thing. SEO ads localization, social integration. Social integration is all of the social, but it's how easy you share. Yeah? Okay, one more time. How does this connect to the MVP philosophy? So you're watching, when you build the marketing into the product on the, say, the social integration, you see how much they actually share. So if you read the Lean Startup, they're talking about a social coefficient of above 1. So say 10 people find out about your product, 10 people find out about a project, but 11 people come back, you're golden. If you've got 10 people who find out about your product and only 8 of them come back, you're not. Keep working. Well, yeah, but on the other hand, if you launch a minimal viable product, you also don't do mass PR. You don't do mass marketing for it. You do ads to pull people in. And then you start testing, because without the people in there, you can't actually find out if it's any good or not. What? You can launch with an MVP. So you launch with the MVP. Oh, so his question is, how does this work with an MVP, right? How do you end up doing all of this with an MVP? So you need to have some people in the very beginning, or else you can't get the feedback, and you can't have the feedback loop. So you get the people in either by ads or whatever, but you get a small group in the beginning. You don't do the mass marketing. You don't do a big marketing spend. You don't do mass marketing spend until you know you've got the product market fit. You won't have an MVP at that point. You start with the MVP in order to figure out what works and what doesn't, what products, what features you should put in, and what you need to implement in order to get it to a fully fleshed product. Okay, awesome. Okay, after product market fit, already got that. You can read this later. Earned media and PR. What is it? So it gives you a spike. In the very, very beginning, you're going to be all excited. You're going to want to be in TechCrunch, and say you actually get into TechCrunch, and you're going to watch it, and the numbers are going to go up, and it's going to be really exciting. And then the numbers are going to go down. And that was it. A spike. That was it. That was the whole thing. Woo! It was a real rush while we went through it, and then you're going, where did they go? Well, usually, they just come in, see where you're at, what it is it interesting? And maybe you'll retain a few, but most of the time you don't. So expect that, especially in the very beginning. But on the other hand, why do it? One, you have TechCrunch on your homepage, as mentioned in TechCrunch. That gives you social proof. That social proof makes it easier for you to get buy-in from people who are coming to the site, okay? Or wherever. So all of this, there's a lot of things that go back with it. It has a strong trust rate. The trust rate for earned media and PR is 40%. The trust rate for word of mouth is around 70%. And the trust rate for ads is around 14%. So you have to think about how we buy. When you hear about something the first time, you're thinking to yourself, well, this is really cool, but I don't really know if I trust it. And maybe it'll stick and maybe it won't. And then you hear about it again, and then you hear about it again, and you hear it again. And then you get to a point, usually between 10 and 100 times of hearing about something without even realizing that you're hearing about it, that you get to a minimum trust rate. This is assuming, of course, that you're not an early adopter. You're talking about normal people because that's the masses that you actually need inside of using your product. So you get to the point where you're finally like, okay, I trust this enough now, but I'm not totally sure if I'm going to sign up. Then you get to the point of signing up, and you go further down. Relationship marketing, you could do this later. Behavioral engineering. I love behavioral engineering. Behavioral engineering is all about changing behavior. So you have to think to yourself, how do you end up changing the user's behavior to use my app instead of somebody else's, or my service instead of somebody else's, or my product, okay? How do you do that? Well, you can't change their motivation because you don't necessarily know what their motivation is, but you can make it as simple as possible, and behavior changes through simplicity. So you have to think about that while you're doing the design. T-shirt economy. Okay, so what is it? Now, there's different ways to incentivize people. You can pay them, or you can get it through their ego, okay? Or through somewhere in their psyche. Example, the Northern European country, I think it was Sweden. I learned about this during my MBA. This was a case study back in the day. They went up to people in a town. They picked a couple hundred people, like 100 or 1,000 people to ask 2 questions. The first group, they asked the question, we have to build a nuclear power plant somewhere in Sweden. Can we put it outside your town for the good of the country? Bless you. And then the second group of people, they said, we have to put a nuclear power plant somewhere in Sweden. Can we put it outside of your town for 6 weeks of your annual salary? Okay? Now, this is a nuclear power plant. 50% of the people who were told, can we put it in the town, outside of the town for the good of the country, said yes. 25% of the people who were asked for 6 weeks' salary said no. Okay? We judge things differently when we're getting paid for it. Then we think, is this worth it to me or not? That's the reason why a lawyer would rather do pro bono work than get paid less than their hourly rate. Because even though they're getting paid something, it says their value is less, and people don't want to feel that, okay? So, it's how you incentivize the people who come to your service or product in order to share it, in order to do other things. How do you get them to do what you need them to? Financial economy, on the other hand, is, well, it's all about being incentivized. So it's all about, what type of money are you getting? And you judge it by, is this worth my time? And can I be doing other things in order to make more with my time? Priming. This is a great example of priming. Priming, this is, Takipi is an Israeli startup. And what they have here is, you see that icon of a dog? Now, priming is a concept, once you do an action once, you're more likely to do it again. So you really just have to get these people to do it that one time in order to get them to do it again. So they put this icon on there, and this isn't an icon that makes any sense. So what do? You click on the icon. It opens up to a picture of a dog. That's it. Picture of a dog. Okay? It significantly raised the click-through rate on the other 2 icons for Twitter and Facebook, and it significantly raised their following and friending or liking of the liking of their Facebook page and their following of their Twitter. Okay? All that through an icon of a dog that came to a picture of a dog. You do the action once, you're more likely to do it again. So that's priming. Framing is, how do you frame the information that you're being given? Okay? So framing is all about, an example. In Italy, when you are speeding, your points go down instead of up. In Israel, your points go up. Okay? You don't want to get to a certain level, then they take away your license. In Italy, loss aversion is stronger than gaining something. Okay? They actually like gaining things. That's like earning something. So loss aversion is stronger, so they had to reframe it. Okay? So this is all in how you frame. That affects your messaging. That affects how you end up interacting and getting connected to your customer. So it's all about how you frame the information you're given. How does this affect you? Well, I was talking to a startup in Bulgaria a couple months ago, and they were trying to get funding. And I'm like, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, we're analytics for enterprise, and we do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of players in that. Yeah, well, we don't offer what those players do, and we're less expensive. And I'm like, well, these enterprises don't really care about that expense. They want all of the information. No, but we're not for them. We're for this other size enterprise, and nobody's working with them. I'm like, then what you're saying is you're actually for small, medium enterprises rather than massive enterprises. You're a premium service for them because you're offering something that they, that's an underserved market. They had framed it to sound like they were offering something cheap to a group that doesn't want it, when actually they were offering a great service, like the most that one market that didn't have any real solutions now had an offering. That's a completely different reframe. So you have to look at how you're also phrasing things. And from that ends up changing how everyone looks at your product. Once you start, how do you get people to come back and share? This is the most important page on the deck, okay? This is all of our action triggers, and we all have them. Reward, status, achievement, self-expression, competition, and altruism. I'm going to give you an example. Germany, status-oriented. You get funded in Germany. If you do not nail it with your startup, if you close your startup and don't end up doing well, you probably will never get funding again. They're extremely cautious. Okay? They are status-oriented. They like their cars, they like their watches, they like their status. Okay? You cannot be branded a failure. Israel is achievement-oriented. Okay? We've got second highest education rate in the world, second only to Canada. Can't believe they beat us. And once you've had a startup and you've exited, then everybody goes, oh, when are you starting the new one? It's not even a question. Okay, you've exited. Okay, when are you doing the new one? If you've closed your startup and you didn't succeed, okay, when are you starting the new one? Well, you achieved raising funding, you achieved doing this, and you achieved doing that. Go do it again. Don't make the same mistakes you made last time. We're achievement-oriented. We see what you've achieved and said, okay, well, you've done all of this. Well, you could take it that much further again. So it's a different mentality. And how you end up doing your messaging is affected by this. An example, again, back to AppsGeyser. We tested the messaging, and we sent out a newsletter that was competitive-based. Oh, your friends are doing this, and you're doing that. Okay? We ended up having to send a bunch of sorry emails afterwards because it didn't go very well. Apparently, they weren't competitive. They were achievement-oriented. And once we figured that out, we changed not only how we phrased everything, but we also changed how we built the product. We added, we added a progress bar and raised, hold on 2 seconds, let me finish the story. So we added a progress bar and raised conversion by over 20% by the same group coming into the site. Yeah.
How do you figure who is who?
So you test it, because you don't know.
How?
How? Emails, newsletters, okay? So you could test the messaging through the newsletters. You can test it by your ads to landing pages, by the way you phrase your messaging, okay? So you can test everything. And there's plenty of books on how to do different types of messaging for different types, so you can actually read up all of that. And there's a whole bunch of information on the last page of this slide that can give you more information on that. But basically, you test it. Now, all of these things over here are just examples of things that you can implement. It comes from a gamification lecture. So all of these things are things that you can implement into the product that reflect. So points would be reward, status is levels, but these are just examples. You can think of a million other things. I mean, think about it. If you're aimed for achievement, then you build things that are achievement-oriented into the product. So how you do that? This is the page that I had before on steroids. I'm not going into it, but I'm giving you the page so when you go and see the deck later, you can go and research it yourself. Okay, the hook. Now, if you have to build a habit into your product, Near.al is amazing, and it starts with, say, an external trigger. Now, I'm going to talk about my addiction to Pinterest. Or actually, I should probably talk about my new addiction to Secret, but I'm not even going to start that. So external would be, I get an email saying somebody else has followed me, right? I go, my action is going into the site. I go into the site, I start looking at pictures. The variable reward is the fact that some pictures I totally love and some pictures I don't. Every time I run across a picture that I totally love, that would be a dopamine rush, okay? And you love that dopamine rush. So you keep going through, and then boom, time suck, 3 hours is gone, and you've been on Pinterest the whole time, and that's the investment. Your time you just spent on there and all the boards you just created, okay? So that is how you end up getting there. And then you end up doing this so many times that it ends up being internal. And you want to start going back because it feels good to be on Pinterest. Because every time I see a picture I like, I get a dopamine rush, and I want to feel that good again. So then you just keep going back and back and back, and that's how you become addicted. That's how a product becomes a habit. So what are you building into your product to make it a habit? Now, this isn't for every product, obviously, but for those that do, this Nir Eyal has a book called Hooked. I highly recommend you get it. Watch the video, Power of User Narratives. Great things to figure out. Now, all of these things are great once you actually have people using your product. How do you get them in? Onboarding. Onboarding is amazing. It's the way you lead people by the hand into getting them to where you want them in the product. Probably one of the nicest onboardings I've seen lately is Paper by Facebook. It's an app. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you get it. I don't know if it's US only. If it is US only, what you do is, TechCrunch actually posted a hack to it. Thank you, TechCrunch Mike. So what you do is you join the store and you put your for payment method as none. So then you can switch your store to the US and then download all the free apps and then switch yourself back. Okay, so that's one way. UX Archive, also another great resource to be able to figure out onboarding. Giving an incentive. So this goes back to all of the things I mentioned before, okay? All the action triggers I mentioned earlier. This is one of them, giving an incentive. This was more powerful for Dropbox than anything else they did in the very beginning. This is what spurred their viral growth. They nailed their product completely. They also did a lot of A/B testing before they even launched. They did a video that had, they ended up getting 5,000 users on their first day when they expected only a couple of hundred because they placed it in exactly the perfect place, okay? They placed it, I think at the time on Dig. I think Dig was the big one and not Reddit. Other things, email marketing. Email marketing has the highest ROI of all types of digital marketing. Yes, it's old. Guess what? Still works. That's why you get spam. If it didn't work, spam would stop. It does. Okay. Keep in touch, notifications. Now, notifications need to be relevant. If they're not relevant, your app will get deleted. But if they are relevant and they're helpful, then your app will get used regularly. So you need to be cautious when you use them, but if you use them wisely, they're extremely powerful. Community. Building in a community, again, that warm and fuzzy feeling of the dopamine. You get a like, you get a heart, you get a whatever, and boom. Warm, fuzzy, warm, fuzzy, warm, fuzzy. Keep going back, keep going back, keep going back. Same thing here, okay? Know your market. I talked about the Dropbox demo before. It doesn't look like a lot of views. You think you need millions. They didn't need millions. They needed a couple hundred in the very, very beginning. This got exactly to the audience that they needed. They had Easter eggs in it. Now, what are Easter eggs? Easter eggs are unexpected little bits that appeal to your market, and only your market will know, okay? So they sent love songs at the time to Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, okay? This is obviously a long time ago. So they put a bunch of things that you weren't expecting inside of the video, and the guys on Dig watched it, loved it, and spread it. Viral if you can, but keep in mind what I told you before. Good marketing will kill a bad product. So Dollar Shave Club does this. It went viral, over 1 million. If you haven't seen the video, I highly recommend you look it up. It is hilarious. But on the other hand, he didn't have product market fit yet. I don't know how they're doing now, but rumor has it not so well. So, you know, you have to think about that before you end up doing something and going crazy. Watch the funnel. Here's how people actually do things. First, they learn about the product. You've got your general acquisition. They sign up. They use it. Once they start using it regularly, and only after they start using it regularly, do they start to tell their friends. Now, on the other hand, if buy is before, then it just moves up the ladder, okay? But you have to start using it regularly before word of mouth happens. Word of mouth doesn't happen before they're using it regularly. So you have to make sure you've got that user retention down. For an app, you can build an app family, put the advertising in all of the various apps. Think about games, kids' games, okay? Disney games. They've got one game, Water, with 7 different characters. And you can buy all the 7 different character games inside of that one game with in-app purchase, okay? Localization. This is awesome. Localization is amazing because all of the other app stores, now this is specific app marketing. It's good also for web, but it's amazing for apps because the other app stores aren't just full. Now you know this, okay? Because this is not an English-speaking app store. So your app store is not necessarily full. So what you do is you translate into the different languages, build the app, but when you localize it, you have to make sure you do it properly. Think about the Chevy Nova. It means no-go in Spanish. Shockingly, it didn't do very well in Mexico. Okay? So think about that. Make sure you don't make that kind of mistake. When you localize, you have to localize completely. You change the names, you change the look, you change whatever you need to in order to make it appropriate for the place that you're at. Branding. I love branding. Okay? Branding is, well, with apps today, apps are now like a product on a supermarket shelf. So, you know, if you've got an ugly icon, that's not pretty, I don't want it. This is. I'll look at that, okay? You want to make sure that you've got the best pics and that everything just looks great. Text isn't as important because you don't see it on the page, okay? You have to scroll to see it. Nobody ever reads it, even with the first line. It's really just for App Store optimization. Social proof, on the other hand, people do check. And this is critical. Make sure that your social proof is good, okay? And now, B2B. You can look at this later, but if you've got a B2B, I strongly, strongly recommend checking this out because this is awesome. It's all the various things you could be doing in order to pull people in and then grow them through. You can read that later. Sample tactics, that later. Communications to an international market. Okay. I'm American. I love American English. As far as I'm concerned, we speak properly. British people may argue with me on that, but then they use U's in places there shouldn't be, and S's instead of C's, and all of these other things, and Z's where there should be S in all of that, right? Okay, fine. There's more Americans than British people. But on the other hand, if you're selling to the UK, use British English. If you're selling to areas where British English is more prevalent, use British English. And the rest of the world, you can use American. Make sure that what you're using is appropriate for the place that you're at. Just don't be nova. International partnerships. Now, you're here in Europe. You have the opportunity to partner with all these other companies in Europe. It's not so difficult to do. You could do cross-marketing, and that would be find a product that's similar to yours but not competitive, and then you end up merging your mailing lists and promoting both of your products at the same time to the market that you're after, but for complementary products, okay? Thought leadership. Thought leadership is critical. Being thought of as a leader in your market builds trust, builds reciprocity, and it also builds the opportunities for more relationships and more partnerships. Marketing is a sales tool more than anything else. So you're doing white papers, you're doing all of this. It's about leads and building up the lead base. And he talked about software as a service before, so I'm not going to go into that. But you have to think about how are you building your funnel to come in. So everything that marketing does is about building your lead base. And then social media a lot of the time has to do a lot more with research and listening to the market when it comes to B2B. Okay? So it's about listening, okay, what's the tone and what's the idea that people have out about our product out on the market? Now, reportive. Do all of you know what reportive is? No?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, a couple people. Okay. So reportive is a Gmail app. Okay, you put it inside the browser for Chrome. And you use it on Chrome, and you put it in, and when you're in Gmail, you can put in the email of the person you're looking for, and when you finally hit the right one, their social profile will come up here. Okay, so Martin used to be my editor, so he's the one that I use now. And you just put in the plugin, and you can find anybody. You can find anybody's email because everybody's email is connected to LinkedIn. So you're looking for somebody, you need their information. How do you find it? Well, that's how you find it. LinkedIn. Okay, you want to be connected to somebody on LinkedIn, or you want more of their information. So you have to figure out, okay, I want to be connected to this person. Rory Sutherland is a behavioral economist, and he works at Ogilvy, and he's a marketer, and he's amazing. So I follow him on Twitter, and I went into a bunch of groups that he was in on LinkedIn, and I went into those groups. And I've chatted with him on Twitter, and I wanted to connect to him on LinkedIn. So after I joined the groups, I was able to connect to him on LinkedIn because we had a common denominator, okay? So then, if you're looking for a name, you want to find somebody, you're doing sales, you're going to be doing cold calling, you have to figure out exactly who you need to get to inside of that office. Well, all you're seeing is Michael P. That's not helpful. So what do? You look that up, you do a Google search, Michael, founder, builder, you take their exact, go back, look at their exact title, okay? The name of the company, exact title, first name. Put that into LinkedIn, boom, you got his last name, okay? And there he is. So that's how, and then you actually make a phone call. So yes, pick up a phone and actually call the person. So that's how you end up finding the names of the people when you're looking to cold call if you're doing B2B. And then that's it, random stuff that I like. I love reviews. I love funny reviews most of all, and there's some great ones on Amazon. Some of the favorites are Mountain 3 Wolf Moon and Bic Crystal for Her ball pen. Thank you.
So, we have time for a couple of questions. One shy hand.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned merging mailing lists with similar but different startups.
Yeah, so if you've...
Is that a good idea ever to share your...
No, so you don't actually merge your mailing lists. What you do is you do a partnership. So you end up figuring out, okay, you are, I'm just going to use a non-tech reference. You're selling dresses and the other one's selling shoes. Okay, so you do a joint promotion where you send on your mailing list the exact same promotion that they're going to send on their mailing list, but it's both of your companies on the actual newsletter or on the actual email. So no, you don't actually merge your mailing list. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that one. You just, you send out the same email to both mailing lists. Okay, yeah.
Hi, should a B2B service company blog? And if yes, then like if it's a small company, how to keep up a constant flow of content?
So it's really hard to do that. So I'm going to tell you, so here's a really interesting one. Qualaroo is Sean Ellis's company, and Sean Ellis is the guy who also came up with the term growth hacker. And so he bought growthhackers.com, and instead of creating a blog, what he did was he created, do you know what Hacker News is? Okay, so he created like a Hacker News for growth hackers, and so they're not actually doing the content. The content's being put by other people who are writing they just find a good article and then they post it onto Hacker News. And then they get the whole social proof by posting something, et cetera, and so forth, and all that is nice. What does Sean Ellis have on there? A little ad in the corner. And that ad doesn't even have Qualaroo's name on it. Only when you click on the ad about get a white paper more on growth hacking do you find out that it's taking you over to Qualaroo. So there's different ways to do it when you don't actually have necessarily even the resources or whatever to pull people in. You have to get creative. I thought that was an amazing idea. So that would be one way to do it. Yeah, it's really hard in the beginning if you don't have the time to blog regularly, but blogging regularly pulls up your reciprocity when you're giving really helpful information and it shows that you're a thought leader. With that said, I totally understand how hard it is to do. I do this for a living for companies, and my own agency doesn't keep up its blog regularly. The cobbler wears no shoes. So yeah, I get it. So that would be, I recommend guest blogging. You want more bang for your buck, so do a how-to guest blog on, say, TechCrunch or The Next Web. By the way, I write for The Next Web. So The Next Web, or one of the local places or wherever for the market that you're actually going after. Like guest blogging would be a how-to on how to do something that has to do with your startup. And the only thing you really get is a bit at the top that's about your company, but that'll get you something. It'll get you the social proof that you need. And that's 1 instead of 3 times a week. Okay. All right.